I am the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I'm offering this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. It's titled, To Look or Not to Look, to become the keeper of the secret or the discoverer of truth, an Easter reflection. To look or not to look, to become the keeper of secrets or the discoverer of truths, to preserve our sight or to look and therefore to choose life. Dilemmas that we face every day in our lives. How often do we look? How often do we refuse to look at life? Seems too much. Often we make the decision that we face many times each and every day, to look or not to look, to turn away not only from the darkness, but to turn away from the light. Just think about the last week of your life. How often have you looked when perhaps you shouldn't have looked? How often have you stared just a little too long at something? Also, how often have you refused to look when you really should have looked? How often have you turned away from life because life seemed too much? To look or not to look, to become the keeper of the secret or the discoverer of truth. Words of Mark Nepo as he reflected on the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. He wrote, There is an ancient Greek myth that carries within it, like a message in a bottle, one of the most crucial struggles we face as living beings. It is the story of a gifted musician, Orpheus, whose lover, Eurydice, is taken by Hades, the god of the underworld. Orpheus is so grief-stricken that he travels to the land of the dead to plead with Hades to give Eurydice back. After a long and deliberate consideration, Hades says, You can have her. It will take you 3 days to bring her back to the land of the living. There is one condition. You must carry her, and you must not look upon her face until you reach the light. If you do, she will return to me forever. Now, unfortunately, unknown to Orpheus, Hades tells Eurydice the opposite. He will carry you to the land of the living. You must look upon him before you reach the light. If you do not, you will return to me forever. Their colossal struggle fails, and Eurydice is lost forever. Nepo continues. The struggle for us, though, is ongoing, for there is an Orpheus in each of us that believes if I look, I will die. There is also Eurydice in each of us that believes if I don't look, I will die. And so the great spiritual question after to be or not to be is to look or not to look. The personal balance we arrive at determines whether we make it out of hell or not. Which do we do? What decision do we arrive at? Do we make it out of hell or do we not? The balance between the two. And I was reflecting on this as I was thinking of Easter. Actually, it seemed to speak to me something of what must have been going on that morning, that first Easter morning. Isn't this what's going on in the hearts and the minds of the followers of Jesus that first Easter morning, at least according to what went on according to the gospel accounts? As they returned to the tomb that first Easter morning, many just wouldn't go, of course, for they could not bear what they might see. Isn't what Nepo's talking about just the story of those who found something in the tomb and those who saw nothing in the tomb? Isn't this the story of those who reacted faithfully and those who fled in fear? Isn't this the story of those who looked and responded to the light and those who turned away? Aren't these all very human responses to what they saw with their eyes when they found what they found in that empty tomb? Well, those who looked, at least. Now, the account from John's Gospel, which is an account I don't always look at, and probably the one I find trickiest, really, in some ways, but there's such a powerful metaphorical message within this account, actually. The account revolves primarily around the experience of Mary Magdalene, who rises before dawn on that third day to visit the tomb. She's a broken woman, as her beloved teacher Jesus has died a horrible death. Now, due to the generosity of a wealthy man, he's been placed in a tomb rather than in a pauper's grave. Mary is going to prepare Jesus' body following the teaching of her Jewish faith. When she arrives at the tomb, she sees that the stone blocking the entrance has already been rolled away, and there is no body inside. She enters broken, in despair, grieving for the loss of her beloved Jesus. Then suddenly out of the corner of her eye, she catches something. She dares to look. The man asks, "Why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" She asks the man, thinking he may be a gardener, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you've put him, and I'll take care of it. I won't tell anyone. I'll just take his body and cleaning him up so that he can rest in peace." And then at this moment, the man calls out her name, saying, "Mary." As Mary hears her name, she then sees that the man is Jesus. As he names her, she recognizes him and then calls him Rabbi, meaning teacher. What does this mean? How do we make sense of this story, this account? Is this resurrection? What do we mean by resurrection? What does this story mean? What sense can we make of it? Well, that's for each reader to decide, isn't it? Each hearer to decide for themselves. I, for one, find it impossible to believe in the literal bodily resurrection. I can't accept that. That, though, does not mean I do not believe in a kind of spiritual resurrection, an awakening that can actually occur in all our human finite lives. And I think this is what Easter's about. And I believe this is exactly what is happening to Mary here. When she heard a name called, suddenly her eyes were opened to a new reality. She began to see, perhaps for the first time. In this moment, through finally seeing with her own eyes, she's called out from her blindness, caused by her grief and her despair. Her eyes are opened, and she is able to see for the very first time. And in this moment, she truly began to understand her purpose in life. On Easter morning, her life began again, for she experienced a spiritual resurrection, a rebirth. And that's something that's open to everyone. And I think this is the message, the true message of Easter. This is what it's trying to teach us. This new beginning. Easter is, after all, the day of new beginnings. Easter calls us to open our eyes in new ways, to see not only what we expect to see, but something more than we expect to see, something new, something totally unexpected perhaps. But we need to look to see. Despite the pains and troubles of life and the temptation not to look, we need to look at everything. Look, we must always choose life, and looking is choosing life, despite life's real troubles and struggles. We must awaken to life, to answer the call, and to pour out the love that we carry within us onto life itself, to live this life, this new life. Mary Magdalene is in utter despair, having lost her teacher, until she once again heard that voice of hope, born from that same place of hopelessness, total hopelessness in that moment. As she did, she was able to see life through new eyes. New vision came, and she was able to turn away from despair back to hope. There in the tomb of despair, hope was born again. A new hope, a fresh hope. This is a moment of that old forgotten word, risper, a new hope, a fresh hope is born in that moment, on that moment of new beginnings on Easter, that first Easter morning. And this is Easter for me, a story of hope for all of us, that whatever happens in our lives, if we keep on turning in faith, new vision will come, new hope will be born. We can give birth to despair and new fresh hope. Easter time in the midst of spring truly is the turning season. It is the day of new beginnings. Easter teaches that we can begin again in love each and every day. This begins as we dare to look and see, for in so doing we see new hope, and by turning from whatever despair may keep us trapped in our empty tombs, we are once again turned toward the light, for we give birth to despair. How we look at life and how we look at others is so very important. How we respond to how we see life matters too. For everything matters, every thought, every feeling, every action, every single look. It matters how we respond to what we see too. Do we turn away in fear or do we respond in love? Do we look or do we not look? There is much in the world that we may wish to avert our eyes from, but if we do, we will also fail to see what is wonderful and beautiful. For each act of violence, there are 100 acts of love, but they don't shout and bawl and scream and whip. They don't make the noise that love does. But it matters how we look. Do we look with loving eyes, or do we turn away from our own tombs of despair? Do we flee in fear, or do we turn in love? We need to look. We need to choose life. We need to become seekers of the truth and not keepers of the secret. And we need to give our love away in our small, humble, and human ways. The choice is ours, to look or not to look, to become the keeper of the secret or the discoverer of truth. Happy Easter. Let's begin again in love. Amen. And I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more, and we can all bless. We bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. So some final words of blessing. May the love which overcomes all difference, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, may that love be in us and among us now and always. And may we carry that love with us, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Amen. Blessed be.